Welcome in, loves. My name is Cozy. I hope you all had a great day today. Now it's time to settle into the cozy corner. I'll give everybody 5 minutes. So grab your pillows, get comfy, and let's have a good night together. Hello, welcome in. Glad you were able to join. How was your day today? My day was pretty good. Just very busy, a little tiring as well, but overall good. Definitely ready for bedtime after this. Well, hopefully this helps you fall asleep comfortably. Okay, it's time to get started. Everybody get comfy and snuggled up. I am gonna start with the story, The Night the Stars Learned to Sing. There once was a village so small you could walk from one end to the other before a pot of tea finished steeping. By day, it was ordinary. Chickens in yards, laundry on lines, slow carts rolling over cobblestones. But at night, the sky above that village was anything but ordinary. The stars there were brighter. They hung low like curious eyes, and they seemed to lean closer each evening, as if they were listening for something. The villagers never noticed. They were too tired, too busy, falling into bed with heavy thoughts and unfinished worries. All except one girl. Her name was Sarah. She slept in a tiny attic room under a slanted roof with a window that opened straight into the sky. Sarah loved the night, not because it was dark, but because it was finally quiet. During the day, her thoughts felt loud. So many expectations, so many shoulds buzzing in her chest. But at night, when everyone else slept, she would open her window, sit on the wooden floor with a blanket around her shoulders, and hum very softly, just little tunes at first, half remembered lullabies, melodies that felt like warm tea and held hands. No words, just sound. One night, after a long day that had left her heart sore and tired, Sarah opened her window and whispered, "Is anyone listening?" She hadn't meant to say it out loud. The words slipped out like a sigh. The stars did not answer. They only blinked quietly, their light gently pulsing. Sarah let out a breath and began to hum, a melody for weary bones, a tune for people who tried their best all day and still felt like it wasn't enough. Up above, the stars noticed. They had been watching this girl for a while. They had no voices of their own, only light to offer. But they found themselves wanting to respond. They tugged at their own brightness, trying to make a sound. but all they managed were tiny flickers. Night after night, Sarah hummed. Night after night, the stars listened. Her little songs changed with her mood. On lonely nights, they were soft and fragile, like sponge sugar. On hopeful nights, they were bright and steady, like the first lantern lit at sunset. And the stars, they studied every note diligently, like students trying to learn a new language. One particularly cold night, Sarah climbed to her window with tearful eyes. The day had been hard. Someone had spoken cruelly to her, and the words stuck to her ribs like burns. She opened the window anyway. The air bit at her cheeks, but the sky was dazzlingly clear. A black velvet cloth scattered with silver. "I don't feel very bright tonight," she whispered. Her voice wobbled. "Maybe you can shine for me instead." She wrapped her blanket tighter and began to hum a new melody, slower than usual, tender, aching, like the feeling of holding yourself together in public and finally letting go in private. Her song floated upward, thin and trembling, and something shifted. The stars that felt sadness, not as a burden, but as an invitation to be gentle. They gathered their light, not to dazzle, but to comfort. One star, a small one near the edge of the sky, pulled all its courage together and tried to echo Sarah's tune. Its light pulsed in little bursts, short, long, short, like stumbling syllables. Then another star joined in, and another. Soon, a soft pattern shimmered across the sky, faint at first, like distant wind chimes. Sarah paused mid-hum. She stared upward. The stars were responding. They were humming back in the only way they knew, with light and rhythm. Sarah laughed softly, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Oh," she whispered, "you were listening." That night, the village slept under a brand new sky. The stars didn't just shine, they sang, not with sound, but with gentle pulses of light, that rose and fell in time with Sarah's melody. If anyone had been awake enough to look, they would have seen the first silent lullaby the stars had ever written. Night after night, the new tradition continued. Sarah would sit by her window, wrap herself in her blanket, and hum, and the stars, eager now, would practice their quiet, luminous singing, growing steadier, more confident, matching her rhythms more closely each time. Sometimes, when Sarah felt happy, she'd hum little noises, playful melodies that skipped like stones over a pond. The stars would sparkle quickly in reply, a glittering chorus. Sometimes, when Sarah felt numb, she barely hummed at all. Just one or two notes, held like shaky breaths. Those nights, the stars would slow themselves down, pulsing very gently, whispering with light, "We're here. Stay with us. We'll keep you company in the quiet." As the years passed, Sarah grew older. She moved away from the village eventually, out into a bigger world with brighter lights and louder days. But the stars did not forget. They kept the songs she had taught them deep in their glowing hearts. And sometimes, on nights when many people on earth couldn't sleep, when worries were fierce and loneliness felt sharp, the stars would begin to sing again. Their light would pulse in slow, steady rhythms, casting a quiet spell over rooftops and windows, over highways and small towns, over oceans and fields. People would look up, even without knowing why, and feel their breathing slow just a little. They'd feel, for just a moment, a soft reassurance that they weren't as alone as they thought. Far away, in some new attic room, Sarah would sometimes wake in the night and feel a familiar warmth at her window. She'd open the curtains and smile at the sky. "You learned well," she'd whisper. And the stars, all those patient, listening stars, would sing back to her, and to anyone else who needed gentle song to fall asleep to. The end. That was the night the stars learned to sing. I'll take a 30-second break and I will be back with the next story. Our next story is called The Tea Shop at the Edge of the Moon. At the very edge of the moon, where the gray dust gives way to an endless river of stars, there is a tea shop. You can't see it from Earth, of course. From far away, it just looks like a slightly brighter smudge of moonlight. But if your heart is very tired and your thoughts are too tangled to sleep, sometimes, just for a moment, you'll close your eyes and find yourself standing in front of it. The sign above the door is made of carved meteorite stone with delicate golden letters that read, Luna's Rest, Tea for Tired Souls. Inside, the shop is much larger than it looks. Soft rugs, woven from starlight and cloud threads, muffle your footsteps. Lanterns, shaped like tiny moons, float gently near the ceiling, casting a pearly glow over every table. Steam curls from countless teapots, each one decorated with constellations that slowly shift as you watch. Behind the counter stands Luna herself. She is not old and not young, just steady. Her hair looks like black velvet at midnight. Her eyes glow like distant galaxies, not in a scary way, but in a way that makes you feel very, very seen. Welcome, love, she says warmly when you appear, as if she'd been expecting you all evening. You must be tired. Most people don't realize they've been crying until she says just that. You might touch your cheek, surprised to find it wet, or notice for the first time how heavy your chest is. You nod. Luna does not ask you for details. She never says, "What happened?" or "Why are you like this?" She simply motions you toward a corner table by a round window overlooking the Star River. "Sit," she murmurs. "I'll bring you what you need." The menu here doesn't have prices. It has feelings. Star mist blend for tangled thoughts. Comet trail chai for hearts that feel left behind. New moon brew for those who need to begin again. Crater cocoa for when you feel like a hollow place inside. Luna watches you, her gaze gentle but precise, and chooses for you before you even decide. Tonight, she brings you a cup of something pale and glowing, like melted moonlight. It's called Quiet Mind, she explains, setting it down in front of you. There's a lot you've been holding. You wrap your hands around the cup. It's warm, but not too hot. Just the perfect temperature to be comforting. The first sip tastes like childhood naps on the couch under a soft blanket. The second sip tastes like the silence after someone finally says, "It's okay. You don't have to keep it together for me." By the third sip, your shoulders have dropped at least an inch. Luna moves about the shop quietly, refilling someone's starlight kettle here, adjusting a floating lantern there. There are others in the tea shop too. A person staring into their cup as if searching for courage. An elderly soul watching old memories play softly in the steam above their saucer. A small child curled up on a celestial cushion, hugging a mug of moon milk and honey. No one speaks loudly. No one rushes. Time moves differently here, like a slow tide. Luna returns to your table and sits across from you. "If you'd like to talk, you can," she says. "If you'd rather just sit, we can do that too." You find yourself surprised at how easy the words come, or at how safe the silence feels when they don't. Maybe you tell her that you haven't felt good enough in a really long time. Maybe you confess that the world feels too sharp lately. Or maybe you say nothing at all. Just stare at the star river. Whatever you offer, words or quiet, Luna receives it like a precious object, never interrupting, never judging. After a while, she reaches behind the counter and pulls out a tiny tin. "This is for when you go back," she says softly. Inside the tin, nestled in tissue made from folded moonbeams, are little tea leaves that look like silver curls. "Steep one in your memory whenever you feel overwhelmed," she says. "Just close your eyes, breathe deep, and remember how you felt right here at this table." "I won't be able to come back, will I?" you ask quietly. A small smile tugs at her lips. "Not in the same way," she replies. "But the path will always find you if your heart needs this place." When you finish your tea, she walks you to the door. Outside, the star river glows softly, like a million tiny lanterns floating in the dark. "Before you go," she says, "leave one thing behind." You blink. "What do you mean?" "Something you're tired of carrying," she says gently. "A worry, a regret, an old story about yourself that doesn't quite fit anymore." You think for a moment, then slowly you cup your hands. In them, a small shape gathers, shadowy, familiar. Maybe it's the sentence, "I'm not worth staying for." Maybe it's, "I always mess everything up." Maybe it's just a wordless heaviness you've never been able to name. Here, in Luna's doorway, it takes form. A little gray pebble, a crumpled paper, a shard of broken glass. Luna holds out a small ceramic bowl. You place the weight into it. As soon as it leaves your hand, it dissolves into a curl of mist, then into nothing at all. Your chest feels strangely light. Luna nods, satisfied. "Better," she says softly. "Now you have room for softer things." She opens the door. There is a brief sensation of falling upward, like being lifted on a tide of starlight. And then You're back in your bed. Earth, gravity, earth, blanket, earth, pillow. Your room looks the same, but something inside you does not. Your breathing is slower, your jaw unclenched, your thoughts quieter. On your bedside table, where nothing sat before, is a small tin, cool and silvery. The label on it reads in delicate golden letters, Luna's Rest, for when you forget how to. You close your eyes, hold the tin against your chest, and let sleep find you. Soft, steady, and kind. That was the tea shop at the edge of the moon. I'll be back in another 30 seconds for another story. The next story of the night is called The Boy Who Bottled Daydreams. There was a boy named Milo who was always being told to stop daydreaming. Teachers snapped their fingers when his gaze drifted to the window. Family members sighed when he smiled at nothing. You're always in your head, they'd say. You're never here. But what they didn't know was that Milo's daydreams weren't just thoughts. They were places, whole worlds. He could feel the warmth of imaginary suns on his cheeks, hear the whisper of impossible forests, smell the sea salt wind of harbors that existed only behind his eyes. On the outside, Milo looked like a quiet kid, staring at dust motes in the light. On the inside, he was traveling galaxies. It was a lonely kind of magic. One evening, after yet another scolding for not paying attention, Milo sat on the floor of his small bedroom, knees drawn to his chest, eyes burning. Maybe they're right, he whispered to the empty room. Maybe I'm just wrong. He stared at his hands, wondering how something that felt so beautiful inside could be so unwelcome outside. A soft sound interrupted him, a clink, like glass gently tapping wood. Milo looked up. On his desk, where there had been nothing before, now sat a small glass bottle. It was no bigger than his palm, stoppered with a tiny cork. Inside, in place of any liquid, swirled a faint, shimmering light, like captured afternoon sunbeams. A scrap of paper lay beside it. In small, looping handwriting it said, "If they don't understand your dreams, save them." Milo's heart fluttered. He picked up the bottle carefully. The luminous mist inside responded to his touch, glowing a little brighter. On a whim, Milo closed his eyes and let himself slip into a daydream. He imagined a hill at sunset, grass waving, sky painted with pink and gold, flowers leaning into the wind. He heard distant laughter, felt the warmth on his skin, the softness of the ground under his palms. When he opened his eyes, the bottle in his hands was glowing. The mist inside now held tiny shapes, suggestions of hills, a smear of color like a sunset, little flecks of light that could almost be fireflies. Milo gasped softly. "You kept it," he whispered to the bottle. From that night on, whenever someone snapped, "Stop daydreaming," Milo would excuse himself as soon as he could, go to his room, and daydream harder, but this time with the bottle in his hands. A forest full of lanterns hanging from branches. Into the bottle it went. An underwater city where everyone moved slowly and no one raised their voice. Saved in another bottle, its mist a calm, deep blue. A library with endless couches and warm blankets, where it was always raining softly outside. Captured in a bottle, lined up carefully on his shelf. Soon, Milo's room was full of bottled daydreams. Some glowed softly, casting moving shadows on the walls. Some hummed quietly, like distant music. Some flickered with tiny stars. He labeled each one with a little tag. Place to breathe. Place where nobody yells. Place where I'm not too much. Place where I'm enough. As the months went by, Milo changed. Not in the way people demanded, but in a way that felt more like himself. He still got lost in his head, but now he wasn't afraid of it. I'm visiting my world, he would think, fingers brushing the bottles in his pockets. One night, a storm rolled through town. Lightning flashed, rain hammered roofs, wind rattled windows. The power went out. Milo's house fell into heavy darkness. He heard his little sister whimper from across the hall. Mom? Dad? I'm scared. Milo hesitated, then reached for one of his bottles. It was labeled, "Place where the sky is gentle." He pulled out the cork. Instead of spilling, the light inside rose slowly, washing over the room like a quiet sunrise. The walls softened, their shadows taking the shape of rolling hills. The sound of thunder dulled to a far-away rumble, like a storm remembered, not happening. Milo stepped into the hallway, the bottle in his hand glowing brighter now. His sister peeked out from her room, eyes wide. "What is that?" Milo took her hand. "It's one of my daydreams," he said softly. "Do you want to visit?" She nodded. They sat on the floor together, leaning against the wall, the bottle between them. Milo closed his eyes and described the world inside. The sky here is always soft. The clouds move slowly, like sleepy ships. The wind is warm, and the grass doesn't mind if you lie in it for hours. Nobody rushes you. Nobody tells you you're wrong for feeling how you feel. His sister's breathing, which had been fast and shallow, slowed down. "I like it here," she whispered. Milo smiled. "Me too." Soon, Milo's daydream bottles became the family's secret medicine. When his mother came home, exhausted from work, he'd offer her a place where time pauses. When his father's brow nodded with unspoken worries, Milo would gently set a place where I don't have to be strong on the table nearby. Even if they didn't fully understand, they felt the difference. The air getting softer, their thoughts untangling, like knots slowly coming undone. One evening, Milo's teacher stopped him after class. "I've noticed you changing," she said gently. "You still drift off sometimes, but there's something different about you now. You seem steadier." Milo considered his words. "I stopped trying to get rid of my daydreams," he said quietly. "I started keeping them." His teacher frowned, not unkindly. Keeping them? Milo thought for a moment. "Some people write in journals," he explained. "I bottle places. Places my mind goes when the world feels too sharp. I used to think it made me broken. Now I think maybe it just makes me a traveler." The teacher was quiet for a long time. At last she said, "Could you teach the class how to make one of these places? In their imagination, I mean." Milo blinked. "You want me to show them?" She smiled softly. "I think some of them could use another place to breathe, too." So one day, instead of starting with worksheets, Milo's teacher dimmed the classroom lights. Milo stood at the front, bottle in hand, heart fluttering, but in a good way. "Close your eyes," he told his classmates. They did. "Think of a place," he whispered, "that you wish existed just for you. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to feel safe, soft, yours." 30 little brows furrowed in concentration. Milo continued, "Give it a sky. Give it a sound. Give it a feeling you'd like to have when you're there. And then," he pressed the warm glass bottle to his chest, "imagine putting it in here." When they opened their eyes, the room felt different, warmer somehow, less harsh. Milo put the bottle on the teacher's desk. Inside, the mist shimmered with new colors, new shapes, a place built from many minds, many hearts, all hoping for somewhere gentler. Milo still daydreamed after that. He still drifted and traveled, but now, instead of snapping their fingers, people began to ask, "Where did you go just now?" And Milo could answer with a small, confident smile, "Somewhere I'm keeping safe. Somewhere I can visit whenever the world feels like too much." And at night, when the house was quiet and the sky was dark, Milo's room glowed softly with bottled words, not as escapes, but as reminders that inside him there would always be a place to rest. And that was The Boy Who Bottled Daydreams. Thank you all for sharing your night with me. I hope tonight brought you just a little bit more peace. Sweet dreams. God bless. Good night. And I'll see you tomorrow.